There are some very obvious signs that your body is in need of muscle activation techniques, and there are some very unusual signs that your body is in need of muscle activation techniques. And on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we are discussing the latter. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg and Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are talking about muscle activation techniques, and specifically some ways that you will know that your body is in need of MAT. Look, there are very obvious ways that we talk about often. A specific muscle is feeling tight. Maybe your joints feeling achy. Maybe you feel like you're getting weaker year by year. Maybe you feel like you're becoming more stiff, immobile. Your range of motion is getting more limited. Those are the really obvious ones that we talk about often, but there are some very unique and unusual signs that your body is in need of MAT, and that's what we want to discuss with you today.
That's right. So the first one is that you have one very specific position that you feel comfortable to sleep in. And when you're not in this position, you regularly wake up feeling stiff, achy, with a kink in your neck, or whatever it is, maybe down your back or in your legs. But your muscles are talking to you and telling you that, hey, that position that you just slept in was not okay. So the first sign is that you have one position that you feel comfortable sleeping in. The reason this is that as your muscles become less and less functional, meaning you need some MAT, is that you lose the ability to handle more and more positions in your body. And so sleeping is a really good example of a time when we're in a position for very long periods of time, or longer than you would be awake, and it causes your body to tighten up or stiffen up. So if you have only one position that you like to sleep in, and other ones have a really negative side effect on your muscles and the sensations that your muscles are giving you, MAT would definitely be something to check out.
Absolutely. This is actually a question that I ask a lot during initial consultations with clients. It's like, all right, what position do you feel comfortable sleeping in? And if there's only one that they list, to me, that's a flag of like, okay, like your body is definitely in need of some muscle work in the form of MAT. Julie, like you were saying, as the muscles get functioning better, they'll be able to more comfortably hold your body in a variety of positions for longer periods of time, which is exactly what happens when you're sleeping. You're in a position or a variety of positions for a longer period of time. Hi, buddy. And so because of that, if there are muscles that are not functioning well and are not tolerating your body being in anything other than one specific position where, you use a bunch of bolsters or supports, have to stack up a bunch of pillows, whatever it is, those are all signs that, okay, your muscles are not working optimally. They're not working as well as they should be working. And because of that, your body, which is supposed to be recovering and being rejuvenated from your sleep, in a lot of ways actually becoming more stressed with your sleep. The second unusual sign that your body's in need of MAT is that it tightens up with activity. Meaning when you do an activity, your body becomes tighter. It's not like the activity feels good for your body. It actually becomes more stressed, more tight with the activity that you're doing. Now, this can show up in a couple different ways. One, it can be a very specific activity that you do, meaning like, okay, I do laundry, or I play golf, or I go for a run, and I notice that, these areas on my body tighten up. But it can also be very general activity, meaning just over the course of my day, just what I'm doing throughout my day. I wake up in the morning, my body feels okay, but by the end of the day, my body feels tighter, okay? And you might be thinking, well, I'm not really doing much from an activity perspective. Like, it's a lot of sitting, a lot of time in the car. Well, in way, shape, or form, like sitting is an activity that you're doing. It's just showing, kind of like the sleeping example, that the non exertion part of the sitting, just holding your body in a certain position, it's too stressful for some of your muscles. Your muscles are not functioning well enough where they're able to tolerate that. So it can be, like I said, a very specific activity: running, golf, tennis, the different things that you're doing around your house. or it can be very general in nature, where it's just, by the end of the day, or, after a long car ride, certain areas of your body are tightening up.
Yeah, I actually had two really good examples of this just this week with some of my clients. One of my clients, she came in, she said, Julie, I've got this shoulder thing that popped up after doing, she does a lot of hobbies on the side that are very physical. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So like, let's see what's going on with that shoulder. And then I asked her, well, is there a very specific motion that it's an issue for? Or is it just in general? Like in general, after you sleep, after you've been cooking breakfast, after you live your life, is it just sore and achy? And she goes, actually, no, it's like when I lift up like this. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's a very specific movement that you're getting some negative, feedback from your shoulder on. So that was a way that it was really very specific. Another one of my clients was saying, oh, I have this general back pain. It seems very general, meaning like I just live my life, I go to work, I walk around at work, I try to be active, and I just have some tension in my low back. And that can be just general activity, makes her back get tired. And so at the end of the day, she has to, chill out and rest for a while. But then I also found out that the way to highlight it was if she's doing dishes. So it's slightly leaned forward and she's in that like kind of pitched forward motion. And so it was interesting because her back tightness and discomfort would be highlighted with her general movement, but then extra with her very specific activity. So these kinds of things are telling us, hey, the muscles are not handling the stress load from your life or the specific activities that you're doing in your day. And so we need to really bolster them up and make sure that they are functioning properly. And that's why MAT can be a really good fit for this type of like side effect of activity, whether you're doing activities or living your life, but you're getting like that tightness from these things.
Exactly. So this is the second unusual sign that your body's in need of MAT. If you find that after doing either specific activities or just general activities throughout your day, your body tightens up. Unusual sign number 3 is that your tendons feel stressed. And the reason why we say this is an unusual sign is because most people, when their tendons feel weird, they think of it as a tendon issue. But your muscles are designed to help support your tendons. And a lot of times, if there's a lot of stress going through a particular tendon, it's because there are muscles that are not helping to support that tendon, not helping to take stress off that tendon. And so some common areas or tendons that will often feel stressed are like around the ankles, like the Achilles tendon, okay? Around the knees, right below the knee is called the patellar tendon, and right above the knee is the quadriceps tendon. The elbows, there's so many tendons around the elbows. A lot of times we'll call it, like golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, where there's tendons, that run along the backside of the elbow as well, the ones that surround all areas of the elbows. But those are often areas where people feel like, oh yeah, those tendons are feeling stressed. And then the biceps tendon that runs right along the front of the shoulder through an area of the arm called the bicipital groove. So that front part of the shoulder, a lot of times people will have, either sharp shooting pain or just a lot of tenderness in that area, especially like tenderness to the touch. And so those are, there's a tendon that runs through there. And when the muscles are not working well, when they're not contracting well, when they're not functioning optimally, those tendons end up taking on more stress.
That's right. And I know if you're listening to this, you're like, but it's a tendon problem, not a muscle problem. And that is such a common thought where like tendons are separate from muscles. And so if you have a tendon problem, you need to address the tendon problem. But tendons are actually the bridge between the muscles and how they attach to the bones. It's like the connective tissue between the bone and the muscle. So every tendon has to have a muscle yanking on it. The interesting thing about tendons is that they can't produce their own tension. Muscles can. And so oftentimes when we have tendons that are symptomatic and are giving you some bothersome symptoms, it has to be the muscles pulling on them. And so with MAT, we try to figure out, well, why are these muscles pulling extra and really making these tendons of the elbow, the knees, the hip, the ankles, the knees, the elbows, the shoulders, and everywhere else we have tendons, why are they getting pulled and yanked on excessively? And what we find is that once we are able to work through someone's system with MAT and muscles are much more balanced, there isn't that constant yank on that tendon, and then they can become less inflamed and feel much better for you.
That's exactly right. Another common one is the IT band. We
Oh,
often
yeah.
don't think of the IT band as a tendon, but it's literally a giant tendon running along the side of your leg that your TFL and your glute max attach into. And so a lot of times when people have IT band issues, it is an issue going on with their muscles, the muscles that are supporting the TFL or the TFL directly, or the muscles that are supporting the glute max or the glute max directly. It's creating some kind of imbalance within those different groups of muscles, which is causing weird stress and tension to be put through that IT band, causing the IT band to feel weird. So with the MAT process, we're able to identify like which of those muscles and groups of muscle are not functioning the way they're supposed to, and get those muscles functioning better so they can start to have better like balance, so to speak, better, more appropriate tension going through all the areas of the body, including the tendons, and then the areas that are feeling particularly stressed can start to calm down because they actually have the support that they need. So if you're experiencing any of these things where there's only one position that you feel comfortable sleeping in, or you need a lot of bolsters in, or in the forms of pillows or cushions or whatnot in order to comfortably sleep. If you notice that your body tightens up with activity, either very specific activity like running, golf, all the things we mentioned, or very general activity, just kind of tightens up throughout your day. Or if you're noticing that your tendons feel stressed, even though none of these like directly you think, oh yeah, this is a muscle issue, we want you to start thinking, oh, this is a muscle issue, because the truth of the matter is that it is a muscle issue. And these are all signs that your body is in need of muscle activation techniques. So if you are in the Chicagoland area or willing to travel to the Chicagoland area and are wanting to experience muscle activation techniques for yourself, that is our specialty here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. All you have to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. On our website, there's a big green button that you can click that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is experiencing any one of these unusual signs that can only sleep in one position? They find that their body tightens up after activity or throughout the day, or they're noticing that their tendons are feeling stressed. Share this episode with them so they can understand that these things that they're experiencing, they are telltale signs that their body is in need of muscle activation techniques. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. Not only does it help people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise, it also helps them find our podcast when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.